just realized I didn't put it in order. Mr. Chair, I show 4 o'clock and we appear to have a quorum.
Thank you. I'll call to order the meeting of the Mesilla Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization Technical Advisory Committee of March 27th.
March 7th, Mr. Chair.
March 7th.
You said 27th.
Long day.
Very long day.
2024. Thank you for that correction. Before we proceed with the agenda, if everybody present could please state their name. And as a reminder to everyone, if you make a motion or make a comment, please state your name for the record. And I'll start on my far right.
Yes, good afternoon. My name's Eddie Salazar. I'm with the town of Mesilla.
Michael Garza, Doña County Flood Commission.
David Weir, City of Las Cruces.
Mike Bartholomew, City of Las Cruces Roadrunner Transit.
Tim Pitts, City of Las Cruces.
Dave Wallace, Bureau of Land Management.
Angela Roberson, Doña County Community Development.
Harold Love, New Mexico DOT.
Thank you. Next item is the approval of the agenda. Does staff have any changes they need?
No, Mr. Chair, there are no changes.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So move Pitts.
Second, David Weir.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Approval of the minutes of January, I'll get the date right this time, January 4th, 2024. I did have a couple of just typo corrections in it on agenda page 7, line 15. The word SIRST should be FIRST in there. And on page 8 of the agenda, line 2, the last word with should be which, WHICH. And on the line 3, the sentence that says we call it, and I probably said it really fast because it's a short word, but it's VIA software, VIA software. That was all I had for corrections. Any others? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as with those corrections?
Mr. Chair, I move the approval of the minutes. David Weir.
Second, Harold Love.
All in favor of approval of the minutes of January 4th, 2024, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Any public comment? Seeing none. We'll move on to discussion item 5.1, Mesilla Valley MPO Annual Safety Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would at this time like to introduce Ms. Katerina Provengi.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and the committee. This is a summary presentation of the Mesilla Valley MPO 2024 Annual Safety Report. So the annual safety report focuses on 5 distinct areas, that is number of fatalities, number of serious injuries, rate of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, from now on I'll say VMT, rate of serious injuries per 100 million VMT, and the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. And this, and the 2024 crash report goes over the crash data from the year 2021. In 2021, here's an overview. We had a total of 3,739 total crashes within the MPO planned area. 9,327 people were involved in those crashes. Of all those crashes, 57 crashes resulted in a serious injury. A total of 59 serious injuries did occur. We had 11 fatal crashes and resulting in 11 fatalities. And for non-vehicular, we had a total of 76 non-vehicular crashes, that is pedestrian and pedocyclist involved crashes. 5 of those were fatalities and 8 of those resulted in serious injuries. Looking at the number of Mesilla Valley MPO fatalities in our area, we did have a decrease from the year 2020. Actually, from 2019, we had 21 fatalities, 2020, 16, and 2021, we had 11 fatalities total. The fatalities did decrease by 31.3% from 2020 to 2021. Oops. And because of the decrease, our rate of fatalities also dropped as well. The fatality rate decreased by 38.9% from 2020 to 2021. This is comparing our fatality rates to the state of New Mexico's. So the fatality rate for ours is lower than the fatality rate of the state. We are both our 5-year moving average and our actual numbers are below the states by approximately 39% below the state of New Mexico. This figure is looking at the timing of the fatalities by day of the week and time of the day. So the day with the highest fatalities was Tuesday in 2021, and majority of the fatalities occurred between the hours of 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. So late afternoon, early evening, or early at night. So this figure, on the left are all of the fatalities from all the fatality crashes, these are all the fatal crashes from 2015 to 2020. It was just to see an overall comparison and compare 2021 to basically just a summation of what we've seen in the past. Looking at the past data, majority of our fatalities since the year 2015 have occurred on Saturdays by quite a bit. And then that's just comparing to 2021. Fatalities by parts of the day. We had we had an equal number occur both in the evenings and in the afternoons, as we saw earlier in the previous slide. 27.3% did occur at night from 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. There were zero, not at night, in the morning. These are in the morning. 27.3% were in the morning. There were 0 fatal crashes that occurred at night. So none occurred between 9 p.m. and 4 a.m. fatal crashes. Got ahead of myself there. This is looking at the fatal crashes by month. January, February, September, and December all had 2 fatal crashes each. April and May and August only had 1. And then March, June, July, October, November did not see any fatalities or fatal crashes. This figure is comparing fatal crashes, and holidays. So looking over here, we did have 1 fatal crash, Martin Luther King weekend, and then during Labor Day, we had 4 total fatalities that occurred that Labor Day weekend. 2 of those did involve alcohol. Keep getting ahead of myself. Sorry about that.
Could I ask a question on that slide?
Yes.
Mike, just as a reminder, when you count fatalities, is that like a single incident, or is that the actual number of people that?
Oh, that's the crash.
So
Yeah. So
like if 2 people died in a single crash, that would be a single incident?
That could happen. That did happen in 2020. I believe we had 2 incidences, 2 fatal crashes that resulted in 2 fatalities each, whereas in 2021, each fatal crash only resulted in 1 fatality.
Okay, thank you. And for the record, that was Mike Bartholomew. I didn't state my name.
Okay. So looking at fatalities and light conditions, because majority of the fatalities did occur in daylight, 55%, or during the day, as we saw on the previous slide with the timing, 55% of the fatalities did occur in daylight. 27% of the fatalities occurred in dark but not lit conditions. 18% were dark but with unknown lighting. Sorry, dark but there was some lighting, so dark but lit. Fatalities and hit and runs, there was only one fatal crash that did have a hit and run, the rest did not. And this graph is looking at drug and alcohol involved fatal crashes. And so we had three of the fatal crashes that did have alcohol involved. 3 of those did have drugs that were involved in those crashes. 3 of those had both drugs and alcohol involved in those crashes, and only 2 of the fatal crashes did not. With that being said, looking at past fatal crashes since 2015, there appears to be a rising trend of drug-involved crashes and both drugs and alcohol-involved crashes. Alcohol-involved crashes did stay a little level, but slightly dropped. And this is just looking at the trends from the year 2015. And then, of course, none. And this is just out of the percentage of the fatal crashes that occurred. Okay, moving on to serious injuries. Injuries did increase by 57% from 2020 to 2021. And because of the increase in serious injuries, we also had the serious injury rate did also increase. Oops, getting ahead of myself. When comparing to the state of New Mexico's rate of serious injuries, we are above the state in both our actual number of serious injuries and the rate of serious injuries. Okay. Looking at the timing, just like with the fatality data, we had a significantly higher number. Well, we had quite a bit. We had quite a few happen. Basically, Sunday had the highest number of serious injury crashes, followed by Fridays and Saturdays, and then Monday following that. Looking at the timing as well, again, late afternoon, early evening, and late evening, and starting at night. This is looking at the timing. So this is looking at, let's see, did I do a side by side? I did not. So the timing of the serious crashes, and this is comparing the past years from 2015 to 2021, and then the time of day over here. So, and then this is just a total on the end and on the bottom. So looking at the timing of the serious injury crashes, it does seem to show that when there's basically higher volumes of traffic, there seems to be a higher rate or higher chance of a serious injury crash occurring, just looking at the data. And then this is the overall trend for just the summation of from 2015 to 2021. Okay. Serious injuries by parts a day, again, the same, showing the same as the previous slide. Afternoons from 12 to 5 were the highest at 40.3%. Then we had evenings, 32.4% of serious injuries occurring between 5 and 9 p.m. And then at night from 9 p.m. to 4 a.m., we had 23.6% of the serious injury crashes occurring at that time, and 3.8% of serious injuries occurring in the morning. Looking at it by month, there was a spike at the early half of the year in March, and then as we get to the second half of the year, we have a major spike of serious injuries in November. September, October, December, or September, October kind of stayed the same. Looking at serious injury crashes and light conditions, again, majority happening in afternoon, evening, so we have daylight when most of the serious injury crashes occurred, and then dark but not lit conditions were like 18% of the serious injury crashes occurred then in those conditions, followed by dark but had some lighting. 16% of those serious injury crashes occurred in that kind of light condition. Hit and runs, of the 57 serious injury crashes, there were only 3 that did involve a hit and run. The rest did not. Looking at serious injuries and drug and alcohol involved crashes, there were, let's see, so we had 7 basically of the serious injury crashes that did involve alcohol. On the positive, none of the serious injury crashes had drugs involved in those crashes, which is good. And there is also a decrease from 2019 to 2020 to 2021 in alcohol-involved serious injury crashes. And this is a map of the light conditions of all the fatalities and serious injuries. You'll notice there is a lot of yellow, which does represent daylight. So to just kind of focus on spots where light conditions are not the best, we took out the daylight. Incidences to focus on, as you see here, to focus on anything that's not daylight. So this is North Valley, and we had, fatality up by Radium Springs, some serious injuries as we go further south, and then a fatality here along I-25. But looking at this, it's looking at the crashes that involved anything that was not during the day. You can it correlates with the area where there's not so much lighting up along North Valley. This is looking west, Picacho Hills area in the airport. And same thing, some of these areas, it does correlate with not a whole lot of lighting that is there in those areas. This is along I-70, looking at some of the lighting conditions, and we see here like where we have, when I say crashes and then like serious injury crashes and then serious injuries, we did have one incident that resulted in 2 serious injuries. That's why that one's bigger. And up here it makes sense because there's not a lot of lighting out there. Same thing with South Valley, not a whole lot of light down there. And we can kind of see where serious injuries do occur along with the light conditions around there. And then the interesting part is when we get to the center of our area, middle of Las Cruces, we have, it varies a lot with the dark but not lit, dark unknown lighting, dusk and dawn. And so there's more lighting within the city. However, you also have a higher density in population. So more people, more cars present, more accidents occurring, more crashes occurring. Okay, so now moving on to non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. It did increase by 26% from 2020 to 2021. Looking at the non-motorized crashes by time and day, so we have the day at the top and the time on the left. Looking at this, Monday is where we had a very high number of non-motorized crashes. Seemed like it happened on Mondays, and then followed by Fridays and Saturdays. Looking at the time, there was a fairly large spike looking at the 5 o'clock hour. Had 14 total non-motorized crashes that occurred in 2021 that occurred at 5 p.m., which was interesting. And then this is comparing the previous years from 2015 to 2021. Again, showing more between the hours of 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. And then looking at non-motorized crashes by parts of day, most of them did occur in the evening between the hours of 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. That was 38.2% of those crashes occurring then, followed by afternoon from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. This is looking at non-motorized crashes by the month. The two highest months were in February and August. And then looking at the least amount was in May, June, and July. Okay, non-motorized crashes and lighting. Again, majority occurred where there was daylight, so 63% of the non-motorized crashes occurred in broad daylight, followed by 22% of those crashes occurring in dark but lit conditions. These are looking at lighting and non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. This is just the map we made just to kind of pinpoint all of them. Majority of the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries were pedestrian. And there were fatalities and serious injuries with pedestrians, and there is only one serious injury that involved a pedal cyclist. And then here, this is East Mesa. There was a serious injury, a pedestrian that was seriously injured over by Wholesome Road. Okay. So this is looking at all of the crashes overall, just looking at different trends and what the data, what all 3,700 and some odd, whatever I said before, shows. So looking at the time and day, again, majority of crashes occurring during the day when people are out and about. And then looking at the day for 2021, most of the crashes occurred on showing Fridays here, 29.5, and then decreases from there on other days. Looking at crashes by month and day, this was interesting. Majority of all the crashes that occurred in our area, the beginning half of the year shows to be fairly low compared to the second half of the year, July, September, October being the highest that had the most crashes occur. And then looking at the days of the week, most crashes were occurring on Fridays. This is looking at all crashes that occurred on holidays. So we have ranked it by like crashes per day. So take the total crashes divided by the amount of time that the holiday usually starts and ends. And it's not just holidays, but also I know Super Bowl is not a holiday, but it is a holiday, or it is a day that people tend to go out and celebrate. So we kind of included that as well. And so same as St. Patrick's Day, Cinco de Mayo, and all that. And so looking at that, the total number, so crashes per day, the highest was Veterans Day weekend at 26 crashes per day. And then looking at that with those that involved alcohol, it was not the highest, but instead, that was Veterans Day, not Labor Day. Veterans Day had the highest number of crashes per day. And then looking at alcohol-involved crashes, that was Labor Day with the highest amount. And then followed by Thanksgiving and then Christmas. So these are looking at all overall crashes and light conditions. Majority happened in broad daylight, and then also separated out by class severities. So with fatalities, again, majority happening in daylight, and that seemed to be the same trend across the board for all of them. Second being dark but lit conditions. Third being, except for fatality crashes, the rest of them were dark lit conditions and then dark but not light conditions following that. Now in 2019, that was the last year that the data would give us the top contributing factor. Instead, now we're being told to focus on first harmful events. So 2020 and 2021 did not have top contributing factor like we've seen in the past. So now we focus on that. So this is the first harmful event, so collision with animal, fixed object, motor vehicle, and so on. Basically broke it down to between the first harmful event and then looking at the severity of the crashes and the total crashes as well. The fatal crashes, collision with the person, was the highest. There were 5, again, like I stated before, 5 pedestrians were struck and killed. And then we had 2 each of the fatal crashes were collision with the fixed object, collision with the motor vehicle, and then 2 were non-collision, which were rollovers. So, and then injury class, the highest amount was collision with the motor vehicle. And collision with the motor vehicle was also the highest for property damage and also with total crashes. So in conclusion, this report is meant to look at crash trends and patterns should they be present. The state and we, the Mesilla Valley MPO, are committed to reduce fatalities and serious injuries. I will now stand for comments and questions.
Any comments from the committee?
Tim Pitts. Yeah, I have a couple questions. One is there a, I mean, just from your experience or your knowledge, is there a difference between a fatal crash and a serious injury crash, or is it just the luck of the draw that that it didn't result in an injury, or that it was just serious injury, or any? I mean, is there any sort of way of telling the difference between those, or should we just be considering those to be the same types of events?
Looking at that, it's like, say we had a crash that did have a serious injury and a fatality occur in the same crash. Is that what your question is? Like how we count that?
Not quite. I think I'm more interested in kind of the theoretical question of are serious injury crashes different from fatal crashes? Or are they sort of the same? It just is what the result was.
Well, a fatal crash is when someone perishes in a crash.
Right.
And then a severe injury. And when we say severe injury, we're specifically focusing on Class A injuries. And that means they required medical transport and could not get up and walk away from the crash themselves. And
Okay, so they would be pretty similar in terms of what happened in the crash.
well,
It's just,
the severe injury, the person is still alive.
Yeah.
And then, of course, a fatal crash resulting in a fatality. And sadly, that person or someone from that crash was no longer alive.
yeah, I guess.
Mr. Chair, if I could, this is Andrew Ray for MPO staff. The question that you asked, Dr. Pitts, is actually something that the UNM, Jessica Bloom, who is the lady from UNM who heads up the crash data analysis for the state, basically. That question that you ask is actually something that she has sort of pondered as part of the annual meetings. We've had some discussions about what are the factors that go into having a crash, have a fatality versus having a serious injury. And back in 2020 or 2022, actually, when we did the analysis of the 2020 data, and you remember the oddities that year of how VMT was dramatically lower, serious injuries were dramatically lower, and yet fatalities from a sort of statistical significance level remained broadly the same. And so that 2020 experience really kind of brought that very question that you ask here to the fore. And unfortunately, in the 2 years since we sort of started having that conversation, well, 1 year, and I guess we're about to have the kickoff of the process of the 2022 data here within the next month or two. Identifying that particular factor of what it is that makes it fatal versus serious injury has been something that's been elusive in just looking at the data. And I imagine there may very well be some sort of common factorial link between those crashes that have those differing outcomes, but I'm not convinced that we're ever really going to be able to get to a good answer to that on the basis of the data sets that we have, the crash reports. not actually having a camera in the vehicle necessarily to track whatever happens. And it may very well be, and to some degree, I think this is likely, it probably is just a bit of a case-by-case basis of the circumstances of a given incident. But I do think that it is telling that the rate of serious injuries has been on a steady downward trend for several years now. So I do think that we can identify the improvements in safety features in vehicles as being a major factor in the reduction of serious injury crashes. At least that's the operating theory that an MDOT goes with as far as the explanation for why we're seeing that phenomenon. But with regards to the fatals, we're not really seeing that. We're not seeing that downward trend. So it's possible that the crashes that result in the fatalities are just so horrific that that's an almost unavoidable outcome. Or it could be that there is some commonality that we have not been able to delve into the data yet. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that really gets at what I'm getting. And I'll tell you why I asked the question is that you know, and I see our good friend Andy Hume, former MPO staff member and airport manager, is here with us. And I can tell you with airline data, these sorts of numbers would be considered horrendous. We would have, you know, the national, what do they call them, the air safety, NTSB, that's it, the National Transportation Safety Board, out doing analyses of all these. And I guess that's my question is, should we be focusing on the 11 fatalities and figuring out what, because I'm a Vision Zero guy. I don't think we should have anybody dying in crashes. I don't know why. I mean, okay, it's only 11 compared to forget the other one, the higher ones in past years, but that's still 11 families' lives that are ruined. You know, as I say, we don't let that happen in the airlines. We're down to virtually zero deaths on airlines, and yet we live with, you know, a dozen people dying a year on our roads, and say, oh, good, we're down. And so I guess that's kind of my question is what can we do about this? And maybe, and I know that right now we may not have an answer, but I guess from the MPO, I would really like some ideas going forward. How do we as a municipality really impact this issue?
Mr. Chair, Dr. Pitts, I do have one ready-made answer about something that we could do to at least improve the data. And it's not necessarily local here to the city of Las Cruces, because I don't believe the LCPD is really a significant contributor to the problem that we have on the statewide level as far as non-standardization and inadequate crash reporting. Because you have the officer on the scene who's responsible for filling out the report. Quite frequently, it's my understanding, I've been told, that those reports don't actually get formally filled out on the day of the incident. It happens at some point later on when the officer is in the station for their paperwork day. And I understand the logistical necessity of doing it that way, but I do think, and I think we see that in the reports, of gaps in the data. The officer doesn't remember. I mean, if it's a fatal crash, it's probably not a pleasant scene, not pleasant things are going on, so there's a certain level of trauma and stress that's going on in the officer's mind. I know that they're trained to work through that, but it still, I think, is a factor that's present. So I think encouraging somehow, some way, and I think that it would take legislative action on a number of the fronts that we being MPO staff, have issues with the crash reporting and the dissemination of that data in order for us to see improvement. But that is an area where I think, comparatively speaking to some of the other systemic issues, where we could see that might be a little bit more of a low-hanging fruit is to be able to get improvement in the quality of the data that law enforcement generates and then is disseminated out to us eventually, because I will again get on my donkey in charge at the windmill of why are we receiving these crash reports 2 years after the fact? That's unconscionable. I rail against that at every available opportunity, such as right now, but it is a source of profound frustration that it is so late.
Again, and one more? Okay, one last question. Just, I don't know if the data are robust enough to get this answer, but I know that at least the city of Las Cruces has spent an awful lot of money on, for instance, Hawk systems for traffic crossings and so on. And I guess, is there any evidence whether they are effective or ineffective, or we can't tell? I mean, if there's any, and if we can, if the data aren't robust enough, I certainly understand.
Unfortunately, Dr. Pitts, for the data set that we are specifically looking at within the confines of the Mesilla Valley MPO, we don't rise to that level of statistical significance really to be able to look at a specific spot where a Hawk signal has been installed to say before and after. Anecdotally, I will just say that I think that it does make a difference, but I am not able to point to a set of data to back up that contention. It's only an opinion on my part. I think it's a correct opinion, but of course I would say that.
Thank you.
Any other questions to my left? To my right? I'll go, this is Mike, I'll ask, I appreciate your comments about how old the data is that you have to work with. It just, I don't quite understand how that happens, but it seems like in this day of technology and everything, you know, there should just be a standard reporting system that actually, even if it goes to the state, you get that information at the same time at the MPO. So that was my one comment. And kind of related to what Tim was saying too, I was just curious about how you can, because this is primarily just data, and we want to reduce fatalities and serious injuries, as it says on this slide. Is there examples of how this data is used in actionable ways in recent years in how transportation planning is done?
Mr. Chair, unfortunately, I'm not in a position to be able to answer that question per se. The data is distributed out via this mechanism, but we also have it available on our website for public review, which I do know, based on conversations and inquiries that I have received, that it is used from our website. But as far as being able to cite a specific case or project that came out of somebody's review of the MPO's annual safety report, I can't say that I have any knowledge of that sort of causal link ever having taken place. That doesn't mean that I'm saying that it hasn't, but I don't have knowledge of that because we as MPO staff are not sort of embedded enough into the city, the county, and the town's project decision. And honestly, that's necessary because of the role that we have, sometimes of the call for projects and the equity necessity, et cetera, et cetera. But we're not embedded enough to know necessarily what factors trigger we're going to do this project this year because of what we found in the MPO's annual safety report, or whether it ever really gets talked about or not. I don't have knowledge of it.
Okay. And then I think my last comment was, is there ways to do studies with this data to compare it to other things like population growth of the area where the accidents occur in, or the VMTs that occur in there? I would just think that as the population grows and VMTs increase, that just statistically, there's still going to be an increase in fatalities or serious accidents. But I don't know if that's a study that anybody's doing.
MPO staff has not historically done that sort of cross-referencing. I mean, it is something that we could probably look at, but I think it might be, that would be a relatively large undertaking to do on an annual basis, but it might be something that we do as part of the MTP. So stay tuned for my next presentation here in a minute.
Okay, sounds good. With that, I'll not have any other questions and let you do your presentation. Make sure, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. So we're moving on to item 5.2, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan kickoff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Andrew Ray for the record. And yes, as I just said, we are at that time again where it is time for us to begin work on the next Metropolitan Transportation Plan, or MTP. I got reminded at Policy Board last month that I speak an acronym entirely too much, and some of our new members did not know what the MTP was. So it's the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. It is the flagship document of the MPO. It is in many respects the most significant of the documents that the MPO works on and maintains on as part of our federal obligation. It is not the document, as this committee is probably quite aware, it is not the document that we work on most consistently. That would be the TIP. The TIP is kind of the, from an operational day-to-day standpoint, the TIP is the most important MPO document. But the MTP is the vision and overarching policy setting document for this MPO and for all MPOs around the nation. The core vision of the current MTP that we have, Mobility 2045, is to serve all transportation users by planning, implementing, and maintaining a transportation system that coordinates land use and transportation planning. The core vision is one of the key elements that needs to be developed with every MTP. So this is something when we are technically, when we all have our sleeves rolled up and we're marking up the maps, the overall vision is something that we need to keep in mind at all times as we are working on the MTP document. We are now in the early stages of the public engagement schedule. I do want to note here that we made a considered decision with regard to this particular MTP, because in the past, we used to do about 2 years, 21 months to 2 years of public engagement in the lead up to any given MTP. We sat down and we thought about it, and there was some conversation that happened on the state level as well, because other MPOs were doing a similar thing. And we realized that it might be to some degree open to question the validity that our first round of public comment would have if we had that first round of public comment 2 years before the document is actually adopted. So on the basis of that, we made a decision to slim down the public comment time to get the whole public engagement process closer from start to finish to when the document is actually adopted. So we're doing about 18 months worth of public engagement. There will still be 3 rounds of public engagement. It's just going to be in a more compressed timeline. The 3 rounds we plan to have will be March to April of this year, which is now. Actually, this meeting is part of our public engagement process. Then the second round of public engagement is going to be in September to November of this year. And then the final round of public engagement we plan to have in March to April, so a year from now in 2025. I do want to announce to everyone that the TAC meeting for April will be a work session unless there's a specific item that comes up where we need to have the on-the-record meeting per se. That meeting will just be a work session, so we will bring all of our maps and we will bring all the markers and we'll get to roll up our sleeves and get all grubby with ink and stuff as we stand around the table and talk and mark up the maps. But it is, in some respects, it's always a valuable time that we have to work on the work, or the work that is done on the work sessions, especially in the initial round, because that's where a lot of the ideas that ultimately end up in the document, that's where those ideas come from. And same thing with the BPAC in April, although there are some items where in April we will have to have the BPAC meeting, but then after the action items are done, we will adjourn and have a work session with BPAC. Again, we also have regular public meetings scheduled. Again, all of the policy board and committee meetings count as public meetings for the purposes of public engagement. But we also have some around the MPO region that we have scheduled currently. We will be in Vado del Cerro on March the 21st. We will be at the Las Cruces Farmers Market on March the 30th. We'll be at the town of Mesilla on April the 11th, and we'll be in Radium Springs on April the 18th to attempt to get the full geographic coverage of the MPO area. Again, getting back to some of the things that we thought about and implemented as part of Mobility 2045, the current one, I'm not going to read all of those, but again, touching base on the presentation that we just had from Ms. Provingi, provide safe travel for all transportation users. Spoiler alert, that is going to be a priority of the next MTP as well. I know this probably comes as a shock to you all, but it will be there. It is a continuing priority. And based on the conversation that we just had, we might very well, as part of this impending MTP, do the sort of analysis of cross-referencing population growth in specific high crash areas to see if there's some sort of correlation between them as part of the MTP process. And the ultimate goal, we want to develop an integrated and well-functioning transportation network that effectively serves the needs of the region. That is, not only is that the goal of the MTP, but that really is the goal of everything that we as the MPO do, both on the larger meta level and on kind of the day in and day out as we go about our business. And as I mentioned before, we did make a specific decision that we were going to shorten the public comment, the public comment phase for this particular MTP. And the MTP must be adopted before June 30th of 2025. Those of you who were with us at that time will remember the last MTP was adopted at the height of the COVID pandemic. And due to that, we actually had to request an extension from the federal, from US DOT because we were late on our MTP because we got all of our public engagement for the final round canceled out from underneath us because we were all in our houses and couldn't leave. So we had to do a late public engagement, which made the MTP late. So that was one of the things. The feds did give us permission, but it was emphasized to us that we need to adhere to our federal deadlines. So we need to make sure that the MTP is adopted before June 30th of 2025. And that concludes my presentation, and I will stand now for any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Right? Yes, Tim. We ask all the questions.
Yeah, I'll ask all the questions. Yeah, Mike and I. Tim Pitts asking, so does the MTP need to be adopted? Is it adopted by the MPO board or is it adopted by the member governments?
It is an MPO document, so it is adopted by the MPO board.
But it applies to all member governments?
It applies to all members of the MPO.
MPOT. And
Yes.
we're just, it's in, because the members have voted that
Yes.
it applies
Yes.
to everyone. Okay, thank you.
I don't know when we will do it, but we will give presentations to the city council, county commission, and town board. We historically always have done so, and we have every intention of doing so again. I don't know if we will do it in the second round of public engagement or whether we may do it in the third round. We may do it in the second because when we get to the third round of public engagement, that's kind of more of here is the document and not so much having ability to make changes, whereas the second round, it's kind of this is the first draft, what do you like, what needs to be added. So this is not a promise, but we will probably go to the council, the commission, and the town board in the second round of public engagement later this year. But they don't vote on it. It's our board that votes on it.
Any other questions to my left down here? No? I did have just a question when we do the work sessions, but personally I would find interesting is like from your last MTP, I'm having problems with that one too.
MTP, just fire it off.
Maybe just like some of the things that came out of the last MTP that were, successfully implemented, and maybe some of them that couldn't be implemented, whether for funding reasons or they're no longer practical, because it might be, especially the ones that were not able to be funded or no longer practical, then it might be a point of discussion on those for the next.
We can certainly make that part of the conversation in April. We can do that.
No other comments? So I guess we'll move on then to the committee and staff comments, starting with City of Las Cruces.
Mr. Chair, the city has nothing today.
Okay, Doña County.
This is Angela Roberson with Doña County. I don't have any project updates at this time, but some commentary rather on Dr. Pitt's questions. And it could be that this has been discussed in this setting before. I'm new to the committee. But Safe Streets for All grants, I'm aware that both the city and the county have been awarded, I think, $400,000 each for comprehensive planning associated with, and I think it's listed as Safe Streets for All is to fund initiatives to prevent roadway deaths and serious injuries. I realize Renee's not here today. He could probably speak in more detail to that. I know our engineering department for Doña County is heading up that initiative. I'm not sure who the lead is at the city of Las Cruces, but both entities do have an initiative underway associated with grant funding for that. Welcome.
Town of Mesilla.
Mr. Chair, I don't have any comments.
Thank you. Las Cruces Public Schools, I guess, isn't here today.
No, Mr. Chair, they are absent.
Roadrunner Transit, not much to report other than our, if anybody's noticed, our new facility going up pretty much across the street over here. It's seeming to be going on schedule, and they're still projecting a substantial completion date by the end of this calendar year. So we're looking forward to moving off of the Hadley facility where we have our operations and moving our operations to that facility. And we have placed our order for our second round of electric buses. Right now we've put in for 6 buses. We'd planned to go for 7, but the cost of things have gone up since we got the funding. So we're going to go for 6 buses right now, and I'll try to exercise a 7th option that we have on our existing contract with them as we cobble together more funds. And that's all I have for right now. And our South Central is not present either. So I'll move on to NMDOT updates.
Harold Love, New Mexico DOT, have a couple of active projects to report on. We have the I-25 landscaping project over at the Loman interchange. As you drive by, you can see the work that's going on. There's most of the work is off the shoulder, so there's not much interruption to traffic. Let's see, our next project is I-10 bridge repairs, mile marker 140 to 145 in Las Cruces. HASI is doing some bridge repair on some of the interstate bridges. They should be completed with their work by March 8th. The big project that's going on is the US 70 or Main Street project from Solano to Elks. Speed in that project is 35 miles an hour. We're placing the bridge over the Alameda Arroyo. And motorists are encouraged to be patient, expect delays, look for construction crews and equipment. And we're thinking that project's gonna take about a year to complete. We also, New Mexico 292 Moto Boulevard at Amador. We have a contractor out there replacing the broken concrete sections that are right there at the interchange. And they should be done with their work by March 13th. And also in that, while that work's going on, we've been detouring traffic to the other interchanges. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you. This is Mike Berthon. We had a question for Harold too from a transit point of view. Is the North Main project, when it was first started, they were looking at a completion sometime in October. Is that still pretty much on track, or is it going to probably be longer than that?
October of this year?
That was what I thought I saw in the news releases.
Maybe October of next year sounds.
October of North Main is
Yes.
October of next year? Oh, wow, okay. Next is MPO staff updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since we didn't meet in February, I do have a few. The first one is I want to remind everyone that we do have an ongoing transportation project fund call for projects right now. That is state money, not federal money. But we have a deadline of April the 5th, so please have the projects into us by then. The required project feasibility meeting with NMDOT is scheduled for April the 12th. So if you have a project that you turn in, please be ready. That will almost certainly, I believe, be a virtual meeting. Is that correct, Mr. Love? We have that as a virtual meeting?
That's my understanding.
Okay, but do be prepared to call into that meeting. It is mandatory for your application to be considered for you to participate in the project feasibility meeting with DOT. Excuse me. Does anybody have any questions about that before I move on? Looks like no? Okay. Next item that I want to talk about, and unfortunately I wasn't, we were only vaguely, well, we were aware that it was going on at the time of our last meeting in January, but we do have a new greenhouse gas performance measure from the federal government that we need to work on adopting here at the MPO. At the time of our last meeting in January, I don't believe that I was aware at that time of the fact that we have to adopt a joint target with the El Paso MPO. The reason for this is because as a result of the 2020 census, there is and I kid you not, 70 square foot nub of the El Paso urban area that is within the Mesilla Valley MPO. So for that reason, we have to adopt a joint target. This is proving logistically extremely challenging for us. El Paso MPO is already, we're going to struggle with this from the beginning because they straddle the state line already, so it's already a very hard performance measure for them to set to try to navigate the very different standards between Texas and New Mexico for them to not only try to set a joint target with us, just to try to set a target for themselves as an individual entity. It is very challenging for them. So what we are looking at doing right now is we are considering adjusting the MPO boundary to move our boundary probably 100 feet to the north to avoid that problem entirely. We have spoken with NMDOT about this option, and I don't know that I want to say boundless enthusiasm for the idea was exactly their reaction, but they are very supportive of us using that as a mechanism to avoid not only this particular issue now, but the belief of NMDOT, or at least one of the more senior members of NMDOT I have heard voice this opinion. They believe that if we don't adjust the boundary now, we're just going to be on the hook for joint target after joint target after joint target going forward. So we may as well just resolve this problem now. And that is definitely very much my opinion, and I have been working extensively with El Paso MPO to figure out the mechanics and the logistics of getting this done. Unfortunately, and I will rag on NMDOT, they did not do us a favor by adopting their target earlier than they had to, because it actually cut a couple weeks that we could have had to work with El Paso out from under us, because Texas, in fact, I'm not even sure if Texas has adopted a target because they filed suit against US DOT alongside a number of other states. But we only have until the end of July for us to adopt a target. So de facto, that means we have until the June policy board meeting for us to figure out something on our end, because I do want to make sure that it is understood here by the members, even if we are able to adjust the boundary to avoid us having to set a joint target with El Paso, we still must set a target here. So that will be something we're not going to be, because it's a political matter, we won't be bringing the boundary adjustment through the BPAC or the TAC. But because it's a transportation planning matter, we will be bringing that performance metric through you guys. And it will be happening around, our plan is for it to happen around the May to June timeframe. So be prepared for more updates about this topic. Does anybody have any questions about the joint target? Okay, seeing none. The last thing I want to update everyone on is the MPO transition. Again, the last time we met early in January, a lot of things have happened with regard to the transition process since we last met. Unfortunately, I really can't go into any detail on the record about what is going on because it's still very much an internal board-driven process right now, and there's a negotiation process going on between the City of Las Cruces and the board, so I can't really go into any details about specifically what's being discussed, but I can everyone can rest assured this is being actively worked on right now, and there's a lot of progress that is happening. So I don't really have anything more than I can say today, but expect further updates as the year goes on. And that's everything that I have to update today. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment. Any comments from the public? Nope. I guess with that, I would take a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn, Pitt.
Second, Harold Love.
Okay. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.